Welcome to Americana Archives. Travel back in time with us as we go throughout America's historic newspapers to find the lost and forgotten history of America. Today's story comes from the great state of Maine. It's reported in the Portland Daily Press of April 14th, 1888. Today's headline is a Dakota Brakeman. The subheadline is his remarkable adventure with the Sioux. This article was originally reported in the Chicago Tribune. It says, "There is one railroad brakeman working somewhere in Dakota who in a certain branch of railroading is a bigger man than Jay Gould. I don't know what his name is, but he is a large, raw-boned, square-cornered, ugly-looking man, somewhere between 6 and 7 feet tall, with a wrong font lower jaw, one which was intended for a man between 7 and 8 feet tall. He always works on the front end of a freight train and enjoys nothing more than a collision with a cattle train occasionally. There can't any tramps ride on his train. He's done more to solve the tramp problem than perhaps any other man in the United States. Hits him with a coupling pin and leaves him for the local authorities to bury. He can't remember the time when he was small enough to take back talk. I was on his train one day in 1887, going on the Northwestern Road from Tracy, Minnesota to Watertown, Dakota. He was feeling a little cross about something, and one of the first things he did was to twist off 2 brake rods and throw them off on the prairie. At Gary, just across the territorial line, some 40 or 50 Sioux Indians boarded the train. They were from the Sisseton Reservation and had been down on the Lac-qui-Parle River hunting. They were rather uncivilized, but they had made progress enough to see the advantage of riding on the pale-faced freight train over walking. They scorned the caboose, however, and scattered themselves along the top of the boxcars near the center of the train. They were, of course, sufficiently civilized to know enough not to buy tickets. When the train pulled out of Gary, the angular brakeman came into the caboose and took off his coat. His face wore a bad scowl. "I guess we'll have to let them Indians ride," said the conductor. "Of course we can't put 'em off till we get to the next station, and even then it'll be the easiest and safest way to leave them alone." The brakeman gave him one withering glance and went out the front door. We climbed up into the pilot house of the caboose and looked ahead and awaited the war of extermination. The train was now going full speed. Get off this, you dirty, sneaking thieves," yelled the brakeman, as he advanced along the roof of the cars, taking long steps and swinging his arms and working his lower jaw sideways. "Jump off or I'll throw you off." The Indians only grunted and lay down and clung to the ridgeboards of the cars the harder. The first Indian he came to was a chief with feathers in his hair. The brakeman seized him by the shoulders and pulled. The haughty leader of a downtrodden people had a pretty good hold on the board and didn't come. Then the brakeman leaned over, took a better grip, and straightened up and threw himself back like a man who has leaned over to feel a buzzsaw when it's buzzing. And that proud old chief of the unconquered Sioux came up board and all, and the raw-boned twister of brakes shot him off through the air, where he lodged against a telephone pole and wilted up like an autumn leaf. Then the brakeman went for the noble savage. He had got a taste of blood, and he made it a bright red day for Indians. He began to walk right through those Indians and throw them both ways at once. They saw their only hope was to get up and fight him. This was what he wanted. For the next half hour, he stood up there on top of those swaying freight cars and fought and tore and ripped and gouged and wrestled and pounded and leaned over and straightened up and chewed and masticated and otherwise communed after his manner with those simple sons of the forest. Lo, the poor Indian, the untutored cuss, fought there the Methodist meeting house fallen on him that day. Some of them he shot off into the tall prairie grass. Others he rolled off into the ditch, and still others he tossed up and left hanging on the telegraph wire and looked back at them sadly, as if regretting that he hadn't time to stop and adjust a clothespin on them. Sometimes, when he struck a car where Indians were particularly plenty, and he was fortunate in getting good holds on them, he shot them out so fast that to us back in the caboose, it looked as if a volcano had broken out ahead, which discharged nothing but North American aborigines in a mangled condition. Again, he would shove one over the side, and then seem to regret the action for some reason, seize the foot of the red man just before it was too late, and stand on the edge and pound the side of the car with this original possessor of the continent. They never got him down, or once caused him to swerve from the great object he had in view. Once they completely surrounded him, but he made a swinging kick, and 6 noble braves got off the train and bit the right away. There were Indians to the right of him, Indians to the left of him, Indians in front of him, but he only swung that lower jaw of his sideways a little, like the gangplank of a steamboat, and scattered them on the prairie. The rolling coteaux of eastern Dakota were planted to low for over 10 miles. Finally, he got hold of the last one. He seemed to throw him off reluctantly, as if he wished he was rather beginning the pleasant task instead of ending it. But he faltered only a moment, and the last Indian struck 10 feet further from the train than the first. That was the only difference. Then he came back to the caboose and put on his coat, and the half-angry expression on his face was gone, and in its place rested a calm, contented air, which told of duty faithfully and conscientiously performed. Thank you for joining us today. Remember before you leave to hit the subscribe button, hit the notification bell, and remember to like and comment below. And we will see you next time on Americana Archives.